The main investigation that will base your diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis will, however, be plasma beta hydroxybutyrate values. We will now have to look at the workup of this patient with diabetic ketoacidosis. One of the initial tests that we will be using will be a urine ketosticks, by which we can identify diabetic ketoacidosis. Urine ketosticks is mainly designed to pick up acetoacetate. The problem is that acetoacetate can then degenerate to produce acetone, and therefore acetoacetate values can even be falsely normal in diabetic ketoacidosis. Please appreciate the urine ketosticks is not the best way to diagnose diabetic ketoacidosis. Why I said ketosticks is designed to pick up acetoacetate. It detects acetoacetate, and values of acetoacetate can be falsely normal in diabetic ketoacidosis. Why? Because it will break down to produce acetone. Therefore, the ideal way for diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis is to go in for plasma beta hydroxybutyrate values. How will I arrive to the fact that I need to go in for a plasma beta hydroxybutyrate values is like this. The urine ketosticks of the patient may be positive. If acetoacetate is elevated, it may even be negative, as I said. So it's not a reliable method. It's one of the initial tests. The blood glucose of these patients or plasma glucose of these patients will always be skyrocketing. Most of the time you will notice in your practice that the blood sugar will be in excess of 350, higher than that, maybe 400, maybe 500 milligram percent, which is substantially high. Therefore, in this particular person with hyperglycemia, you will be getting electrolytes checked, that is sodium, potassium, phosphate. You will always notice that the values of sodium in these patients will be lesser. Why sodium reduced in the patient is because high glucose will draw water, and therefore the water component will dilute and will cause sodium values to become lesser in the body of the patient. Clinical studies have shown that glucose and sodium have an inverse relation whenever we are talking about diabetes related complications. Whenever blood glucose rises by 100 milligram percent, the values of sodium tend to reduce by approximately 1.6 millicoulomb. What I'm explaining to you at the moment will be referred to as hypertonic hyponatremia. I'm calling it hypertonic. Why? Because the osmolality of the plasma is increasing due to excessive amount of sugar in the blood. It draws in water and causes a dilutional aspect to come in. So there is a hypertonic hyponatremia developing in this person. The potassium values in the blood of these patients will always be elevated. Do remember, acidosis causes potassium to come out of cells. Efflux. Therefore, there is a compartment shift. Potassium in our body is mainly inside the cells, and now it is coming from inside the cells to outside. So compartment shift is explaining the hyperkalemia component. What I say next will sound surprising to you, but do appreciate that total body potassium in diabetic ketoacidosis is significantly reduced. I have said two different statements, and that confuses a lot of students. A lot of them say, sir, on one side you are saying potassium in the blood is more, then you say total body potassium is less. Yes, that's a possibility. Majority of potassium in our body is inside the cells. Total body potassium is reduced. Why? One reason for that can be understood as that low total body potassium is because the patient is having vomiting. Vomiting causes hypokalemia. Potassium is present in body fluids. The second is osmotic diuresis that occurs in diabetic ketoacidosis. Do remember that because blood sugar is high, the high blood sugar will cause polyuria in the patient. This polyuria will explain the dehydration component plus loss of electrolytes in the urine. So total body potassium is lesser, but at the same time in the blood it might be elevated. And why are we studying this? The importance is, why are we studying it? When we will treat the patient, that is when the potassium will start going inside the cells, because when you correct the acidosis, potassium goes inside. That can cause hypokalemia. Hypokalemia can trigger arrhythmia, torsades de pointes. So in diabetic ketoacidosis treatment, you are in a very dangerous wicket. You're playing a cricket match, bouncers coming all the way. If you don't treat the person, potassium elevated can kill the patient. And if you treat the patient and if it becomes too low, then you can trigger Torsades de Pointes in a patient. So a very fine balance has to be maintained. It's a gradual correction of the abnormalities that has to be done, and an interrelation of these has to be understood. So let's appreciate and practice the interrelations once again. Sodium will be low. Why? Because the sugar will draw in water. So it is called as hypertonic hyponatremia. Potassium is elevated due to compartmental shift, and treatment of the patient will result in resolution of acidosis. So therefore potassium can go inside the cells, and hypokalemia can trigger Torsades de Pointes. That is why to the correction fluid we attach or we add potassium chloride. We give it in little amounts only, but it has to be given to keep potassium values to be in range of 3.5. If it goes less than 3.5, you are on dangerous wicket. You are dangerous because I said hypokalemia can trigger Torsades de Pointes in a patient. So treatment of these patients basically is based on the fact that if you're good with your electrolytes, if you're good with your fluids, you would be able to save these patients. Otherwise, these patients can die. That's why I was saying mortality rates can go up to 20% for this condition. The values of phosphate will definitely be increased in these patients. So these three aspects have to be remembered definitely. That is a low sodium at the moment, elevated potassium, elevated phosphate in a patient. The next investigation to be done in the patient will be a arterial blood gas analysis. He has mentioned that if arterial sample is not available due to any reasons, don't press for it, because diagnosis can be made on the basis of venous blood gas analysis as well. The acidosis of these patients will be so pronounced that you will be able to identify the disease even with VBG, that is venous blood gas analysis, and let's just look at how the report will come. The pH will always be less, obviously acidosis. Bicarbonate will also be less. Why? Because of the consumption of bicarbonate by the hydrogen ions, that is ketones. There are three of them: beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, and acetone. So they will consume bicarbonate. And because of acidosis, person will do fast breathing. That hyperventilation will cause carbon dioxide values to also become lesser. So do remember, in all ABG MCQs where all these changes are going in the same direction, this indicates that the patient is having a metabolic component. I have short separate lectures for ABG analysis, and you should be able to rather solve all questions of ABG without any glitch. It's simple plain mathematics. Go through those lectures. At the moment, the learning for you is logical. Why we are saying metabolic acidosis? Because bicarbonate is consumed. The hyperventilation component causes washout of carbon dioxide from the body. If carbon dioxide is normal in this patient, that means compensation process has not started. We will say it as uncompensated metabolic acidosis. If carbon dioxide is low, it means the hyperventilation has started. That means it is partially compensated metabolic acidosis. So if this is the report given to you, because carbon dioxide has become less, we are calling it partially compensated. Why not fully compensated? Because pH is not normal. If PCO2 is normal in this report, I will say uncompensated metabolic acidosis present in a patient. The main investigation that will base your diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis will, however, be plasma beta hydroxybutyrate values. If this is elevated along with demonstration of metabolic acidosis, you have the diagnosis in place: diabetic person, ketones, and acidic pH. You are definitely right in your diagnosis. Because initially these patients might be having a presentation of severe abdominal pain, vomiting, you might misdiagnose this case as that of acute pancreatitis. So amylase and lipase is also to be done for these patients. The values could be normal or could be slightly elevated. Because I said infections could be a trigger for development of diabetic ketoacidosis, so TLC, total leukocyte count, will be increased. Because of the dehydration component in the patient, KFT of the patient, both urea and creatinine is highly elevated in these patients, and as you treat, they tend to come back to normal. It's merely the dehydration component which is causing this derangement to occur in the patient. If we will be doing a anion gap calculation, the formula for anion gap is positive charges in the body, that is sodium, from which you will subtract the negative charges, that is chloride and bicarbonate. In these patients, when you will calculate the anion gap, the value of anion gap will always be increased, so it will always be written as HAGMA, HAGMA, that is high anion gap metabolic acidosis. The reason why it is high anion gap, because the positive charges in the body are more, so it is called as high anion gap metabolic acidosis, or HAGMA for questions. Metabolic acidosis has been dealt separately in the kidney section. You can go through that. But do remember these aspects. The minimum aspects that I wanted to remember is the changes in the electrolytes of the patient. Sodium is less. Why? Because of the hypertonic component and water coming in. Remaining two are deranged. And the remaining facts, I think 6, 7, 8, 9 that I've written, they are very easy and easily identifiable, and you can definitely solve them in questions.